Appropriations Subcommittee. I think we're number 4. So ethics is first up. So Tom, y'all can join us up here, please. You can either sit right there or you can take the podium, whichever works for you. Oh, I don't know.
Yes, sir.
That's why she gets a gold star.
I think it may mean that we share some sort of weird nerd thing, but that's okay. But she's been so helpful and understands how small agencies work. All right, I know y'all got a full schedule, so I don't want to keep y'all. Our stuff's usually pretty short and sweet. We're a very small agency, 6 employees. Our budget is less than $500,000 total. There's a few things that I want to touch on this memo that have changed since we submitted our budget request in August. A couple of those we anticipated. We are not part of the personnel system. The ethics law exempts the Ethics Commission and its employees, but the State Personnel Board has always been really helpful to us by helping us figure out what our salaries should be. And the last time they did that was 2018, looking for FY 2019. We asked them to update it, and everything, I'm not as familiar with everything SPB has done because we're not under their purview, but apparently everything has changed because of the SEC squared initiative. So those numbers, the new numbers we got were sort of filtered through that change, and we're a little bit apples and oranges to what we dealt with in the past. So after talking with a lot of experts who all said, just kind of pick something. We went back and looked at the range that they gave us in 2018, and our targets had been basically the middle of that range. And so moving forward for apples to apples comparison, we decided to go with the max in that range. So one request today on top of what we asked for in August was enough money to meet those goals in our compensation structure. Emily's got all those details. I'd be glad
Is that what is on your handout that says revised requests?
Yes,
is that
sir.
What you're talking about?
It includes that and some other stuff that I'll explain in just a second. Emily's got all those details. I didn't bring those with me. Y'all are welcome to see everything that SPB gave us and everything we've come up with and all those detailed salary numbers. But what I'm getting here is just the bottom line. So the revised request at the bottom would include changes to compensation. It would also include the PERS increase. Y'all, I'm sure know way more about that than I do. My original request was based on what PERS initially said they were going to ask for, and then that was revised to a 2% increase. So,
well, let me ask you there. So, my recollection is we didn't increase like they wanted an increase. We didn't pass the increase last year, but they're asking for. So, does this include if we, the legislature, should end up doing that? Is that what you're saying?
This revised request includes the salary increases I'm asking for, plus an extra 2% on top of that for the increase that PERS has announced.
Okay.
So what
they were requesting, but the legislature hasn't approved yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Assuming it gets approved.
Assuming it gets approved, that's included in here.
Okay.
Because the way the amount of money the agency has to pay to PERS is a percentage of salaries.
Right.
So if salaries goes up, PERS contribution goes up. Same with unemployment insurance, workers' comp, and some other stuff. So that's 2% of payroll basically for that. Another thing very mundane is travel. our whole annual travel budget is $9,864. We had a term end and somebody came in and replaced one of our commission members, which happens sometimes every year. Two commission member positions open up every year. We had a guy who was local, and then we got somebody from the other end of the state. And so the amount of mileage we have to pay goes up, the mileage reimbursement rate goes up. That's a $4,000 a year difference for us in a $9,800 budget. We just can't really absorb that. We have a pretty tight budget. We don't usually have a lot of money left over. So I know that may seem nitpicky to come in and ask for money based on one mileage check going up, but that's the kind of tight margin we operate on. That's really, that's everything. There's a lot of detail behind all that. Like I said, Emily's got that. I'd be glad to answer any questions y'all might have, but I don't want to take up much time.
I'm just curious, what, you said you have 6 staffers. What are the positions of the staffers?
Executive director, that's me. Jose Simo, who's here with me today, is our assistant director. We're both lawyers. We've got an investigator, executive assistant, investigative assistant who handles all the investigative records, and our disclosure analyst, who Mary Bolden, who some of y'all may have talked to when it's time to file your statement of economic interest. She handles those forms. We've got 2 independent contractors, which is our accountant, and then a lawyer that we contract with to be our hearing officer in our open meetings and public records cases. Included in the August request is an increase in the hearing officer's contract. We've gotten a lot more of those cases in the last few years, and they've become more complex. We've always got a backlog, and she runs out of money every year because there's more work for her to do. She's willing to do more work, and so we ask for more money for that too.
Okay, looking here, I guess this was last year, state support special funds for IT equipment and thing. Update us on that.
So we got 2 batches of money for IT equipment last year. I came in for the first time ever and asked for deficit appropriation last year because of the increase in health insurance premiums. Also asked for more money for the hearing officer and money for IT expenses. And the IT request was based on a couple of things. One, we had a failure in a key component. It was a switch that ITS had given us like 12 years ago. It was surplus property for them. They gave it to us, and we kept it that long, and it broke. And they gave us another one and said, you got to buy another switch within about a year. This thing's not going to last. We had also been told by 2 different consultants that we needed to replace all our computers, which is only 7 computers, I think, because they were old. So we got the deficit money. We bought the new computers. DFA is supposed to move us to another building. We're at 660 North Street. They're going to move SOS from Capitol Towers into there. It's my understanding there's been some delays to that. We've not been told when we're going to move, but our IT consultant wants to wait and buy a new server when we move so they don't have to move it twice. So the first batch of money was deficit money last year. We bought what we had, the immediate needs with that. The batch of money for this fiscal year will be used on the server. We honestly got more money than we asked for both of those purposes, and we're not going to go blow that on mink coats or anything.
Please don't.
We will not do that. We're not even going to buy extra equipment.
Commissioner of Public Safety will come after you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I saw him come in the room, so I won't admit to anything like that in front of him. So yeah, there'll be some surplus in both of those pots of money because we got more than we needed.
Well, that leads me to the question, is that going to, do you foresee you spending it this fiscal year?
The FY24 money that's earmarked for IT expenses, yeah, we will spend some of that, probably not all of it, but we've already budgeted for a new server and I think a new switch, and I forget, maybe some other equipment. Again, the IT consultant wants to wait until we're ready to move to buy that, so we haven't actually purchased it yet.
Okay.
Also found out
this year. Yeah, so that's what I was clarifying. It relapses back because of the type of funds it is.
There's another pot of money you might be asking about that's earmarked for ITS. it was reappropriated last year. It's a $10,000 special fund money. That's for an SEI project. Without dragging that out or overcomplicating it, the SEI system lets us know who has filed. It doesn't let us know who is supposed to file. And I've been working there 20 years. I just had a conversation with our chairman who's been on the board 40 years this morning. It is an intractable problem that we've always worked on is trying to find out exactly who all the people are who are supposed to file. Because if you don't know who's supposed to file, it doesn't do you much good to know who
Why?
did
Because
file.
that's in statute somewhere.
Not explicitly. The problem is everybody thinks somebody has a list of all those people and nobody has it. And we are always trying to build it, but it's like hitting a moving target. So one tool that we think might help would be to have an online database that ITS would build that would match with our SEI system so that we can run a report that would show, okay, if this database is complete, which will have to be done manually, then you can tell the difference between who was supposed to file and who didn't file, and then send notices to those people saying, you forgot to file, you need to come in and file. So that's what that $10,000 is for. We got that year before last. ITS, somebody left ITS, like the person they were going to get to do that left. And the last time I talked to them, they had not filled that position. That's why the money had to be reappropriated, because they didn't have anybody to do the work. Hopefully that's going to get done this fiscal year, but we don't have a lot of control over that.
So you received $14,000 in capital expense last fiscal year, as well as the 10,000 you're talking about. So that $14,000, if that's not expended by the end of this fiscal year, and it's not reappropriated in your bill, then it will lapse back to the capital expense fund.
Yes.
So if that amount is not, if it's not needed, if you don't need the remainder of the money, then it's okay. It can lapse back.
Yes.
But if you need money for next year to continue this IT project, then you need to request a reappropriation.
Of that money.
Is
My
that-
understanding is that
that's right.
$14,000 could not be spent on the IT project with ITS. That's the separate $10,000 pot of money. ITS has told me all along that the 10,000 should be plenty to do that SEI project. The 14,000 should be more than enough to.
I think what we need to know, if you could maybe give us an amount, because what's going to be there, because we need to do the reappropriation, assuming it's not going to be finished.
I don't think we're going to need a reappropriation in either one of those funds. The $14,000 was to
Okay,
buy.
so if it's not done, then it'll just relapse back into capital expense.
Right.
And okay, all right, that's good.
I mean, if neither one of those things are in our control, one we're dependent on DFA, or, well, we could go ahead and buy the equipment and just move it twice or set it up twice, which is probably what we would do. So I don't think that 14 is gonna some of that will lapse, whatever we don't use, but I think we're gonna be done with it before the end of June. The 10,000, that's gonna be up to ITS whenever they can do the work.
Okay, all right, any committee members, questions? All right, that covers what we need for now. Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next is Department of Public Safety and Commissioner Tyndall. Just you today? Okay. You generally have a big request. So, well, I was kind of referring to amount. Well, sorry, numbers versus amount, but okay. You've been allotted 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
As you know from court, you don't have to take that long.
4 minutes.
4, that's right.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, as well as other senators that are here. Just some highlights that we start off in the package that I wanted to share with you from fiscal year 2023. And if you look on the first page, you'll see the arrests that Capitol Police has made between July 1st of 2022 through the end of last calendar year. We had over 700 arrests for felonies. We had approximately 300 misdemeanor arrests. We issued a number of citations, obviously have taken some illegal drugs off the street, as well as seized illegal firearms that were seized during the course of several of these arrests and investigations. We're standing at about 153 certified officers at Capitol Police. That number's grown from about 75 a couple of years ago. We have 21 civilian employees, including admin, dispatch. We've increased our vehicles to 134. And so we've also bought body cameras this year. I know that was a big push and a big discussion in last year's legislation. Y'all did provide funding for that through ARPA. We did make an emergency request to move through the procurement process without having to go through the whole ITS procurement for those body cams, because it was going to take approximately 18 months to secure that through the regular procurement process. We felt like it was an immediate need for Capitol Police, more so than our other divisions. So for the remainder of our divisions, we are planning to go through the standard procurement process for body cameras for the rest of our law enforcement officers, particularly in the patrol side. Just for reference, so that you'll see that we made 704 felony arrests over about a year and a half. In 2020, Capitol Police made 3 felony arrests. In 2021, they made 2. And in the first half of 2022, going up to June 30th, they made 2 felony arrests. So for the 2.5, 3 years ahead of the transition of Capitol Police in the direction that the legislature saw fit for it to go under DPS, you had 7 total felony arrests. And obviously since then, that number's increased dramatically. And so I think that's been a benefit for the capital city. It certainly shows that these officers are out there working the streets and doing their job, and I think doing well at it. If we move on to the next page, the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics, you can see that for 2023, they made over 1,300 arrests. They initiated over 2,000 cases. They seized numerous drugs from cocaine to fentanyl to heroin. And so they've been very active. And you see the overdose death numbers at 334 for 2023. I want to highlight this for you. In 2020, there were 529 overdose deaths in the state of Mississippi. In 2021, it was 497. In 2022, there was 479. So for 2023, we're down to 334. That's obviously a drastic improvement. And I think a lot of that, again, proud of the work of the folks in our department, their eagerness to get out there and get illicit drugs off the street, educate young people as part of NBN's programs too. They go out to schools and talk to young people about the dangers of drugs and overdose and deaths that occur. So hopefully through education and enforcement, we're seeing those numbers drop, and also, public awareness campaigns. So I think that's a drastic, obviously, improvement from 529 in 2020 to 334 last year. Moving on to the next page on the highlights. Autopsy reports, when we started in 2020, we had over 2,000 autopsy reports that had not been completed dating back to 2010. As of the end of January, there remained 2 of that 2,000 backlog that we're still working on those autopsy reports. The last count I got is our standing backlog is at around 200. Those are cases that we're still working on over the last year or two. Sometimes there's delays because doctors may leave, which we did have one doctor leave, or in the situation where we had one of our doctors studying for her boards. She was busy trying to get that completed and got a little bit behind on our autopsy report. So we're continuing to working on that. We have 2 medical examiners, forensic pathologists that are working at the forensics lab right now, actively doing autopsies. Dr. Levon is still with us. He's testifying across the state in some of his older cases and assisting with what's really been very helpful at the ME's office, our contract pathologists that have come in and help us avoid getting a backlog. We have doctors from West Virginia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas that come in and work in our lab and help us with the autopsies while we're searching to bring in some full-time forensic pathologists. I will say one of the challenges at the ME's office is recruiting doctors to come here. There are 500 forensic pathologists nationwide. So if you divided it out between all the states, that'd give you 10 in every state. But when you look at the population of Mississippi, obviously there's a lot of demand nationwide. So trying to get these forensic pathologists to come here is a challenge. I've spent money out of my own pocket trying to recruit doctors to come here, and we've, had some good conversation with them, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's so competitive out there with salaries and resources that other states are willing to provide. Sometimes we get a little behind, although our salaries have gotten a lot more competitive when it comes to paying those doctors. But all that being said, we've brought on death investigators, we've brought on pathology assistants. Y'all have helped us by increasing the budget at the forensics lab and the medical examiner's office. And I think that's why we're seeing the turnaround and success that we do there. Cybersecurity, at Homeland Security, we started the cybersecurity division. We hired a director. There's 2 members of that staff. That's something that we're looking to grow. We did that last year. Melota, we graduated 784 students from the basic class or advanced training in fiscal year 2023. Highway Patrol graduated a class last year. We started a new one this January. We're hoping to graduate 40 cadets out of that class. Talked a little bit about the medical examiner's office. I did want to highlight this for you all. In 2023, there were 496 homicides. In 2020, we had 525 homicides across the state. 2021, it was 604 homicides. In 2020, there was 566. 2019, 438 homicides. And in 2018, it was 412 homicides. And before that, in 2017, we were in the 300 homicides across the state. So from 2017 to 2021, we went from having 300, I think 70 homicides or so, to in 2021, 604. So we are starting to see a decrease from that high in 2021. And so I think hopefully that's an indication that things are getting better. And, I don't know if it was COVID. I don't know if it was coming out of COVID, but we saw a lot of overdose deaths and we saw a lot of homicides. And so again, I think you all's commitment to public safety hopefully is having that impact that we're seeing those numbers also drop.
Commissioner, I'm going to stop you right there. Have you seen, so I've received from the Council of State Governments a very good synopsis of the crime stats in the state and nationwide. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that, no, sir.
Which it tracks what you're talking about. It said in Mississippi, the homicide rate increased 9% from 2012 to 22. And then things start going down. That's homicides. And then it goes on about, and in short, when you're looking at all that, it tracks things are going down. There are a couple things that go up, but I think that's meeting with what you're saying.
Yes.
So I may send this to you. I thought it was very good. And as far as things go, Council of State Governments is in fact really reliable.
Well, I think obviously in 2020, there was a lot of talk nationwide, defunding police, a lot of narratives putting out there. And there was, I don't know, obviously very unsettled times. And so I feel like the commitment to public safety has been there over the last 2 or 3 years, and we appreciate that. And hopefully we're seeing the direct impact of what it means when you provide, and we can provide greater funding to
2022
public
is
safety.
probably when we started, I guess, increasing that, and probably nationwide,
Yes,
and put funding in there and all that stuff.
that's correct. That's correct. Moving on to our next page, you'll see our budget, consolidated budget request. You can see what Elbow has proposed. If we can restore it to level funding from last year, we would need an additional 2.8 million to get to that. We are operating at an operational deficit, 2.4 million. That is Capitol Police. That's the only division we have right now, the 11 divisions that we have that are operating at a deficit. Part of that is, and we've discussed it, trying to get the number of Capitol Police officers up to the level that we believe we needed, especially in light of the expanded district that we're going to have to cover starting on July 1st, 2023. I think we were allocated up to 150 pins for last year. We have kind of gone past that number. In fact, we have 16 cadets. I think it was 16. We might have had a couple drop out of the basic academy that should be coming out and joining Capitol Police in the next 2 to 3 months once they get out of the academy.
So you're right. You had requested up to 150 to this point for Capitol Police. So you're operating at a deficit. So what is your request to get of the Capitol Police?
We feel like the number
I think your previous number was, if you wanted a full 225 or 250,
that's right,
to be there. I don't think we can get there this year. So between 150 and between, what number are we looking at?
So, and if you remember, we were at 75. We said we needed to get to 150. I think the general consensus was we would not be able to get to 150 in 1 year. So there was no point funding even though the pins were allocated, there wasn't any point funding all of it. So we funded about half of that in the first fiscal year, and then y'all funded the second half of it last year. Now we've kind of shot past that number and we're gearing up for July 1st. We would like to get to 200 by the end of this fiscal year, with the ultimate goal of getting to that 225 Capitol Police officers.
200 this fiscal year.
Yes, yes. And, with that, obviously the expanded district that we're covering with the expansion of the capital improvement, the CCID lines, a lot of that is residential households. And when you start having to respond to more domestics, more house burglaries, more auto thefts, and just more issues that you deal with when you have that population base is growing, not just the typical area that we've done the last several years. You need more officers. So
let me ask this. You
yes,
said y'all are Capitol Police operating at a deficit. That's telling me you have more than 150 Capitol Police. How many do we have right now?
I think we have 153 plus. So I got the number here. We have 153 certified officers. And then we also have, I think it's 15 to 16 at the academy that should graduate in April. So when you add those and then some of the expense with outfitting, it's about $8,000 per Capitol Police officer that we hire to equip and outfit them. Of course, we've been adding vehicles and other things that they need out in the field. So that's that $2.4 million deficit that we're seeing, and that we would ask as part of a deficit budget that would be given to make up that gap for the operational over expenditures that we've had at Capitol Police. Highway Patrol asking for additional $6 million there over last year's budget. Part of that is the new troopers that we expect to graduate. Travel inflation, that's obviously an issue. I'm sure that y'all are hearing a lot about the cost of travel. We also have some maintenance at some of our sub-districts that needs to be addressed, and then some equipment for operations totals about 1.2 million. Support services, we're asking for $100,000 to help fund our public safety summit. That's something that we started doing last year. We're doing it again this year. This worked out really great. We've had speakers come in, and it's an opportunity with the Public Safety Summit to offer an additional type of training that some of your upper level law enforcement and first responder management might not get at their typical sheriff's or police chiefs conference. So we try to bring in Navy SEALs and motivational speakers about keeping and retaining law enforcement and really addressing some of the nationwide issues that we have. So we would ask for some funding to cover the Public Safety Summit going forward in the future. The forensics lab, I think it's been well documented, some of the issues that we have there. We're asking for an additional approximately $8 million. 3 million of that is the salary to bring everybody up to market. When we opened up the medical marijuana, a lot of private labs started opening. We started losing employees that were getting better salaries at these private labs. And so in order to stay competitive, we really feel like we need to have those salaries up to market. It's obviously important at the crime lab. We're running about a year and a half backlog on turning around narcotics and drug testing. We just need more people. And we have been looking internally at ways we can improve our operational management. In fact, I've been meeting with consultants that are sitting down with us Thursday to go through a list of recommendations on ways that we can speed up our internal processes so that we can do more per day. But getting these employees and keeping them is a challenge, particularly when you're talking about folks that are getting out of school with a forensic science degree and they have other options after we train them. They leave for other states or they leave for private labs. I think I told the story last year of a young guy that we had brought in, did the training for about 18 months, and he had an opportunity to go work in Erdick in Vicksburg at a lab there. And the best I could have offered him was 44. Under the new pay scale y'all produced, he was going to get 60. And so there was really no way that I could compete for him at that point, and we lost him. And that happens routinely. We're also asking for some additional money for outdated equipment, some vehicles. We haven't ordered new Intoxilizer 9000s. Those should be going out to local departments. We've been using an Intoxilizer that's over 10 years old. So with the new equipment, we're going to have to do more training, more service. And so a lot of that is for addressing the new Intoxilizers that we bought and getting them out in the field for law enforcement. The Law Enforcement Officers Training Academy, I know this is a really big number. It's got a little shock factor to it. I'm asking for an additional $50 million. But really that's capital expense money that typically would be in the bond fund, but we put it here because we know that y'all haven't really been doing the bonds like you used to. If you haven't been out to Malota, I encourage you to go. It's obviously a very old facility. I found a training manual that my grandfather, who went to Malota in the late 60s for law enforcement training, was there. And really not much has changed other than they cut down the pine trees. So the buildings are pretty old. And I think it's time, we talked about defunding some of the defunding police efforts. I think if you want to improve law enforcement, the answer is not defunding police or not paying them. It's paying them better salaries, but also giving them better training. And better trained law enforcement officers will do a better job investigating crimes, crime prevention, and then also protecting the public in general. So what we would like to do at Malota is at least do a comprehensive study and architectural design of what it would take to build a new campus at Malota. I really see the future of Malota being also one in which we do a lot of advanced law enforcement training for investigations. As it stands now, you can be a detective or investigator and you don't have to get any sort of formalized training or be certified in that when you're named to be an investigator or chosen to be an investigator or detective. We want to change that and offer those kind of curriculum. What I'd also like to do, and I've put up kind of what our design would look like at the new Malota. And this is based on what I saw when I went to the Alabama Law Enforcement Training Academy. They have their corrections, have a training academy there. The Highway Patrol has a training academy there. The Wildlife and Fisheries has a training facility there. And so they put all their training in one campus so that they could cross-train, they could work together. What I would like to see is wildlife and fisheries, instead of them having their own training academy somewhere else, they actually share the space with us at Malota. Same thing with corrections, same thing with highway patrol, MBI, MBN, the basic law enforcement training. All of it would be on one campus, and we really create a training institution for law enforcement, not just everybody doing their own different thing. I feel like for the future, this is just one of those things that will really move Mississippi forward, and we can offer more advanced classes. We can take better use of technology. We can do some remote training. We can do simulators for active shooters. There's just a lot of different things that we can do with a new campus that we simply can't do with the buildings that we have now, and just the training facilities that we have. So I would ask that y'all consider that. At least we maybe look at it, get it off the ground, get some funding to do the initial phase of planning and see what it would cost long-term to get us to that point. Driver Services Bureau, obviously we've had a lot of success there. We've had some good leadership, and one of the challenges that we still face, and I hate to keep coming back to salary, but we're asking for an additional $5 million there, $2 million of which is salaries. We hired 33 new people at Driver Services. We lost 46. A lot of them are coming in. As soon as we hire them, they're coming out. These are jobs that, that's what you're going to face with some of these positions. Better salaries will help us keep them. And so we're asking for some increased salaries for our salary plan there. We're also asking for some money to build out and create 2 driver's license mobile stations. Basically, these will be RVs that we can take to any county in the state and have days set up at the courthouses where we do some driver's license in each city or county across the state as may be requested. I think that, along with the legislation that y'all did last year, giving us the ability to do the not kiosk, but the computer stations at the courthouses where we can have virtual driver services is going to be a big benefit and has helped already. Equipment, we're looking to build out a driver service station in Canton. We have a building up there, and we would like to finish the build out of a driver service station up there. The Metro Jackson area obviously is our largest population center for the state. As it stands now, we have an office in Pearl and we have an office in Jackson. We feel like we need an additional office in Canton, as well as we move out into our new headquarters building, we're going to need a location in the city where we can have a driver service station. We've also been looking at leasing some different locations that are conveniently located so that we can continue to service the Jackson metro area. The Bureau of Investigation, last year, we added 9 new non-patrol agents. We're asking to add some additional non-highway patrol agents to the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. We feel like, particularly with the officer-involved shootings that we're doing and trying to be a more proactive force with MBI, this is a good thing to do. Travel and operational equipment, including vehicles, cameras, laptops, it's an additional about $2.3 million for MBI. Capitol Police, we've talked about that. The new law enforcement positions to get us to 200. That's about $3 million above where we are, plus the deficit. Support operations, another $645,000. We've also been in contact with Rankin County and some of the neighboring counties about quotes to house people that we arrest in the CCID so that we can take advantage of the jails without having to overburden Hinds County with more inmates. And so that was about it was $950,000 for 40 beds was the quote we got at Rankin County. Of course, another $2.4 million for the vehicles. Bureau of Narcotics is an additional $1.8 million. That's additional agents, also moving to the sworn pay scale, some money for equipment and vehicles at MBN. CTED, 10 new law enforcement officer positions there. Vehicle replacement is $250,000. Public safety and planning, $750,000. additional funding there. I don't know if you're aware, but the state reimburses all local law enforcement for folks that they send to training academies. It was $3,600 per cadet. That was voted on by the standards and training to increase that to $4,000 per cadet. And that's not just state law enforcement. That's Harrison County, DeSoto County, any law enforcement officer that goes to a training academy in the state reimburses the local county for the cost of sending them to law enforcement officer training academy. So we're asking for the additional funding to keep up with that increase that was put on for the law enforcement training across the state. We're asking for additional funding with Homeland Security. Obviously, the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor have been very keen on improving cybersecurity. These are new positions and bringing those salaries to market. Obviously, when you're dealing with cybersecurity, the cost of those types of individuals are highly trained, and they're expensive salaries because they can demand that in the market. So we're asking for that as well as some new vehicles there. To go over some of the ARPA funding and what we've done for fiscal year 23, and we're asking that be reappropriated in fiscal year 2024 is on the last 2 pages. You can see what we've asked for cybersecurity, some of the improvements to our HVAC system, the forensics lab backlog, cybersecurity, the medical examiner's office in North Mississippi. Y'all have already given us the money to purchase the building. We're asking for the authority to purchase. We have found a location next to the University of Mississippi's hospital that they acquired in Oxford. With that, at the forensics lab, we're also asking for some additional funding to hopefully hire 1 or 2 doctors as well as death investigators, pathology assistants. Everywhere I go in North Mississippi, that's a very popular decision to add a medical examiner's office to North Mississippi, much like the one we have on the coast with Dr. Turner servicing the south part of the state. If we have a ME's office set up in the north part of the state, that's a big benefit because when we have these forensic pathologists have to go out and testify, if they have to testify in Tishomingo County, for example, they're going to spend all day driving up there, driving back, and that's a day that they're out of the lab. If they can come from an Oxford location, they don't have to spend their whole day traveling just to get to a court to testify. So again, we're looking to build that out and fund that and hopefully get the legislation that'll give us the authority to spend the money you gave us to buy that facility. So.
2 questions and then turn it over to the committee. So one, the request has been made and the bill's been dropped for the pay increase for the troopers. Can you, what is that request? And then
That's, yes, sir. That's NBN and that is Highway Patrol as well for a pay increase. That would get the starting salary to $60,000. You know, I think as it stands right now, the city of Oxford is ahead of us on starting pay as well as DeSoto County. I think Ocean Springs recently got up close to 50 as well. Then when we look at our neighboring states and their state police and highway patrol, we're starting out at higher levels. So this would get our starting salary to $60,000. The cost of that is $14.5 million to fund that entire pay increase for.
How many officers?
There's 500 highway patrolmen right now. Obviously, we're trying to get that number up by having some of these annual schools. We've done an annual patrol school for the last 6 or 7 years. Obviously, before that, I think we went 10 years, maybe 1 patrol school. So we feel like once we get to that point where we're having 30 to 40 retire a year, and that's going to drop off because most of them will be newer troopers, we'll start to see that number get up closer to hopefully 600.
Okay. My other question was, I think you and I had talked about training to increase law standards. Is that request in here?
That request is not there, but I did want to bring this up. And the blackout tags, I think that's a fund that has exceeded expectations. And there's a good bit of money in that to cover death benefits for law enforcement officers, which is obviously a top priority. But with some of the money that is in there, I feel like these are some priorities that I'd like for y'all to consider with some of the extra money if we could have access to those funds. One is a death benefit for all law enforcement officers that is paid out immediately regardless of if it was in line of duty or not. We've had 3 or 4 officers that died in the line of duty that the families did not have enough money to pay the funeral expenses. And we don't have, sometimes you don't have the time to make a full decision as to whether or not it was in the line of duty. If we paid out $10,000 to $15,000 to every first responder that died, whether it was in line of duty or not, we feel like the money's there. And then we don't have to go out and start setting up GoFundMe's just to cover funeral expenses for these individuals. And I think that's the least we can do for their families in these situations so that they can get a check quickly without us having to go through a determination as to whether or not their death was in the line of duty. Number 2, I would feel like we could send some of the funds to the Board of Law Enforcement Officers Standard and Training to hire investigators and staff to better monitor training across the state, as well as to investigate complaints against law enforcement officers. As it stands now, we routinely wait for a police chief or a sheriff to notify us if they've had an officer that has left under circumstances that would warrant their certificate being removed. I think we need something much like what you have at judicial performance or the bar or at the medical licensure board, where our investigators can go out and be more proactive investigating public complaints against certain law enforcement officers if there's a basis for it, internally going ahead and removing their certificate after an investigation. Right now, we don't have the staff to do that. And if we had the staff to do it and a little bit more broader authority to initiate our own investigations, it might be that some of these incidences where we've seen, I know on the coast, we had a law enforcement officer that just pled guilty to embezzlement. Of course, we've had the incident in Rankin County. We could do more to address some of these public complaints against law enforcement officers and have the resources to send investigators out. So I think that would be worthy of some of the money in there. Also, see some of that money going towards Melota again for better law enforcement training. I think a lot of the problems that we see and the complaints that we hear about can be addressed with better training across the state. And then lastly, I'd like y'all to consider a grant program for local law enforcement to get body cameras. Maybe we could take some of that money and do a dollar for dollar match. If the local departments are willing to spend $1 towards body cameras, we'll match it with $1. And so that we can put body cameras on law enforcement officers across the state. I think it's good for them. It's good for the public, creates more accountability, and it really helps good law enforcement officers every day when they have that body cam to support their interactions and false allegations that do come in from time to time.
Okay, any members of the committee? Senator Hickman?
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for all the work that you guys are doing. I heard you say earlier that you did the deficit of, well, I don't know if you said it, no, you did the emergency procurement process to get body cams for Capitol Police, but I think you said you're still going through the regular process for our troopers. How many officers or are these new body cams? How many officers don't have body cams, or do any officers not have body cams?
The state troopers don't have any body cams. They do have dash cameras.
Right.
And so while the dash cameras are great and you do get an audio from it, there are often incidences where what happens directly in front of the car won't show the entire incident. And so that's the benefit of the body cameras. It gives you the entirety of the circumstance.
So how long do you anticipate it'll be before you have body cams for everyone in?
Probably be another year. I mean, that's just how long the procurement process takes. I mean, I wish there was a quicker way to do it, but because of the technology component to the body cams, we have to go through ITS and that procurement process. And the good news is once we go through that, that contract can be piggybacked on for all local departments, and they can also use whatever ultimate provider is chosen.
All right, thank you.
Senator Norwood?
Commissioner, when you say locals, do you have threshold there?
For the body cam program?
Yes.
I don't. It would have to be something that we'd have to have some sort of application process for, and it would probably be a grant, much like a lot of the grants that we deal out through public safety and planning and Homeland Security, where, once the grants were completed, then we'd have to cut it off and then come back next year and either reapply or, keep going down the list on applications. But I will say this, and we had an officer involved shooting at Capitol Police about a week ago. It was the first time that we had the body cameras available. And I do think having the body cameras in today's law enforcement is just as important as having your firearm, your taser, any other piece of equipment that we give law enforcement. It's that important that they have those body cameras in today's world.
Senator DeBar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I noticed on the front, it seems like we've had this where we have had less and less troopers applying for the academy and so forth, and now you're hoping to graduate 40 this year. Is there anything you're looking at doing for as recruitment to try and bolster those numbers?
If you went back 15 years ago, we'd have over 1,000 applicants. This last trooper school, we had about 300 to 400 apply. I can tell you it's not just us. I mean, it's departments across the state, it's departments across the country are having difficulty recruiting. I think we've got to look at the salaries and address that. I mean, it's a demanding job. And younger people, for whatever reason, aren't choosing to go into this profession. So, I think there are certain things that can be done to address that. I will tell you, Colonel Haynes, obviously, very intelligent guy. He's very close to finishing his doctorate. He's very focused on law enforcement training, not just for troopers, but for our basic classes out at Malota. And we're all are passionate about it. Director Carlton out there as well is trying to improve law enforcement training. And I think when you have better trained law enforcement officers, the effect of that is all of a sudden people might look towards going back into that career. And so I think that's a big component of it. We're also trying to look at ways that we can modify the training so that it's more educational based. We've talked to some troopers that have gone to the Texas, that have left Highway Patrol and gone to the Texas DPS Highway Patrol Academy. It's longer, but it's not as physical as probably ours, but it is a lot more academic. And so trying to increase what they learn there from an academic standpoint, I think is also important. And so, it's reaching out to these young people, trying to get them to go look at a career in it and then changing the image of law enforcement in general.
Are you taking previously certified officers, or these have to be brand new officers now?
With the legislation that y'all passed a couple of years ago, we did do one prior certified class that was shorter. And we saw a lot of interest in that from current certified law enforcement officers. And what we've been trying to do is just do some different models. The last class that we had before this one, we did a system where they all came in together, but the ones that had not been previously certified went for an extended period of time, and the ones that were previously certified could leave early if they had met their standards. And so that had some benefit. It had some drawbacks. So talking to Colonel Haynes, we might look at doing another certified class here in the future where we advertise for a shorter school, but it's all prior certified.
The pay raise bill that the chairman asked about, was that 60,000, moving up to 60,000 for starting pay?
That's the proposed, the new pay scale that we're proposing. The one before got us to 50. And we did see a little bit of a bump in interest when it obviously got to 50, but then, local departments start offering more, which is great. I think they should. And I think it's again, one of the things I see with law enforcement, there's very much a mindset of working overtime, working extra hours. But if we've got law enforcement officers that are working second jobs or doing, 10, 15, 20 hours worth of overtime every week, they're not going to be at their best every day. They're going to be tired. They're going to be fatigued. And with the expectations that we put on law enforcement officers these days, we need them operating at 100% every day and not overworked and not stressed about finances at home.
Well, I know several troopers who will take personal leave and go on and work another job, construction job or whatever as well. So, so will that proposed raise include MBN officers, agents as well, or is that?
It includes MBN, it includes MBI.
Okay.
And then with the legislation that y'all passed, having Capitol Police and CTED equitably set towards that, it would get them a pay bump as well. I do think we're probably at a point as an agency, everybody ought to be on the same pay scale.
What about Capitol Police? What are they starting at, or will they?
They're starting at about 44, 45. So
Okay.
they're a few $1,000s less.
Okay. Are you having any issues trying to recruit for Capitol Police? Or
do.
do you?
But I will say this, and I'll give Chief Lucky and his team credit. We were able to get a lot of good law enforcement officers that want to come be a part of an organization where they're allowed to do their job. They know they have the support of leadership. And so I think there was a lot of excitement, and there still is, about coming to Capitol Police and being able to be a part of a success story in Mississippi. In fact, I was seeing in Louisiana where the Louisiana State Police is going to start operating the city of New Orleans, and the mayor was all on board with it. That's great. And I think we've worked really hard to improve our relationship with the city leaders in Jackson, particularly those in the police department. And so we're really working hands in hand with Hinds County, JPD, and other local law enforcement on trying to make this city, this capital city, safer.
Well, I can tell you, I know some of the locals here, we went to, I think it's Fondren Board, we went and talked to them, and just House Bill 1020, which the chairman helped push through and you were working now, they love it. So we're getting a lot of good feedback from it. One of the questions they had is about misdemeanor courts and so forth. How can they push forward, because it's not just about felonies, there's a lot of misdemeanors. Is there something you're looking at for that as well, or? Maybe
Well,
I
of
should
course,
ask the
with the-
chairman, I guess.
Yes. With the bills that y'all passed last year, I think the AG has the authority to appoint some prosecutors, and the chief judge appoint some CCID court judges to handle the misdemeanor cases. I think the intent, although it won't be ready for a little while, is to have a courthouse at the Wright Ferguson building where that would be essentially a CCID misdemeanor court. It could also hear, I think, preliminary hearings on felony cases. So some of this is going to take some time. I think they found a temporary location by which to do that. And I imagine that we will, it can't happen fast enough. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Hobson.
Oh. I'm having flashbacks.
Never mind. Just go ahead and cut his budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor report.
Commissioner. The 4.1 million increase request for increase, that includes the new troopers and the pay raises for all levels, including CTED and Capitol Police?
No, that is in the line item on the 4.1 for Mississippi Highway Safety Patrol. That's just the new ones that we have coming in with this class. The additional pay raise on top of that, I think is the total is 14.5 million. So that does not include the pay increase.
Okay. Well, you said, it said in here, I thought I read that included adjustments.
That's adjustment to the pay scale. You know, even on the new pay scale, every 4 years, there's an adjustment for the ones that have been here. So it's trying to reach those that are getting the bump every 4 years.
All right. And the training academy, is that the building we looked at in the off season that we went to?
Yes, sir.
They were doing getting the mold out and the HVAC work,
Yes, sir.
and that's 50 million?
That building, we would still keep in operation, but it wouldn't be the primary training facility. The 50 million is to build out a whole new training facility. With, again, 6 pods where we would have a cafeteria, and then 5 other state law enforcement agencies would also have their training facilities there, as well as a dormitory and a multi-purpose facility. You know, being realistic, I doubt y'all would give us that this year. But what I would like to do is planning for the future. If we can get some money to do some detailed planning and get some cost estimates, so that a year from now I can come back and say, if we want to build this out for 10 years from now or 5 years from now, whenever we can do it, this is what it's going to cost. These are what the plans are. And this is how we can offer more of a, again, institutional setting for training law enforcement, and not have all these different state agencies going to different places, but doing it all under one roof.
And the last thing is, you mentioned the intoxilizer being old. I thought we put in some funds a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago, for intoxilizers.
No, I think we asked for it. We never got it. So we went ahead and just took some of the money out of the interlock fund. and use it to buy the Intoxilizer 9000s. And so those have started arriving. We've got to equip them and build them out towards Mississippi standards, and they'll start getting delivered later this year.
We didn't put that in an equipment fund or something that you
I don't think so.
I would have.
I don't think so. I know we talked about it, but we
You had,
found.
you had
we-
old intoxilizers and I thought we addressed that at some point.
Y'all might have given us some money to repair the old ones that we had. You know, I don't think you did
how many years you been on? Is this your third year?
yeah, I came on,
Fourth.
it'll be 4 in June. And so, but we found the money again in the interlock device fund. There was extra money there and we went ahead and ordered 100. I think it was 100 out of that particular fund to pay for the
Yeah,
intoxilizer.
check on that. Let me know. I mean, that's something I thought that we had done and, I mean, if you've got intoxilizers that aren't working properly, we need to get that corrected. That's not good for anybody. But anyway, I'll check our old files to see, but I would have bet a lot of money that we put put money in there for that to get everybody up to date. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
One housekeeping thing on the black tag. Sounds like we're gonna need to do a general bill. So my assumption is that would be through our annual tag bill. So if you can keep us on that or have your folks look at that, because sounds like we can't just do it in an appropriation bill.
That's right. I
Okay.
agree. I agree.
And do y'all have a general bill introduced to purchase the property for ARPA funds?
We do. I know that's been dropped, I think in the House or the Senate side. Senate side. So we did get that dropped.
Okay. And then the lease to purchase for the Canton building, are y'all going to purchase that?
Yes, and so the lease purchase on the Canton building, we entered into a lease with Madison for that building. I had them put in an option to purchase it so that once we fulfilled our lease obligation, we could purchase it basically for $1. So yes, we're going to need some legislation either this year or next year to address the authorization to acquire it for $1.
All right. Sounds like you're done.
Thank
Thank you
y'all.
very much.
We
Appreciate it.
Wasn't too bad.
We'll take a 2-minute recess and then we'll start with the Attorney General. It's done. Yeah, so we'll begin last one today, the Attorney General. Y'all can either right here or at the podium, whichever. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, we will proceed with the Attorney General's office. I note that the Attorney General herself isn't here, but I think Ms. Lipscomb is, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. And I will note for the committee that I was informed they're scheduled to be in the House at 3:45. We will do our best, but we got you first. Well, we're in the honeymoon stage right now. But yes.
We're just where we're told to be when we're told to be there. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Whitney Lipscomb. I'm our Deputy Attorney General. I have Yolanda Nash here, who is our CFO. We're here today on behalf of Attorney General Lynn Fitch. Unfortunately, she could not be here. She was previously scheduled to be in North Mississippi when before this hearing was scheduled. So you get us, unfortunately. Well, I want to just take a moment to give a little background about our office, about the attorneys there before we go into our budget, if that's okay. As you well know, General Fitch is the Chief Legal Officer for the state of Mississippi on both civil and criminal matters. She's charged with managing all the litigation on behalf of the state, which is a pretty heavy task. So to carry this out, we have an office made up of 126 dedicated attorneys, 67 investigators, and 90 other professional staff who are divided into multiple divisions all across the state. And although we have multiple divisions across the state, we've implemented measures such as our case management system that this body has supported over the years that allows us to operate efficiently and communicate across our office as well as with other agencies. I want to highlight some of our divisions and the accomplishments this past year. First, I want to mention our Civil Litigation Division. This is the division you're probably most familiar with. Our Civil Litigation Division defends the state of Mississippi, its agencies, elected officials, and employees when they're sued. This can include a wide range of constitutional issues, Title VII employment matters, voting rights cases, prisoner cases, contracts, 1983 actions for damages, suits for injunctions, audit demands, and other matters. At any given time, we have over 300 active cases. Fortunately, we do tout a 96% success rate, which means those cases that are closed are 96% are closed in favor of the state. Some of the cases right now that are active in our Civil Litigation Division include the 1020 case regarding CCID jurisdiction. I know you were just speaking with Commissioner Tyndall about that. As well as we have a judicial and legislative redistricting cases that are ongoing, and both will be going to trial this year, as well as a number of corrections litigation, a number of those cases that are ongoing. So just to give you an idea, this is the division that represents all of our laws when they're challenged, all of our legislation when it's challenged. So our Criminal Appeals Division represents the state in all felony criminal appeals that result from either a successful prosecution by our office or any of the 23 DAs, and that includes our death penalty cases. For FY23, criminal appeals had nearly 500 filings, so they are a very busy division. Our Solicitor General Division oversees all of the state's appellate litigation. That's in both civil and criminal cases. This was a new division created by General Fitch when she came into office. As you're well aware, the United States has a Solicitor General, as do the overwhelming majority of all of our states. It's an important position because our appellate cases set precedent not only for our states, but for other states and potentially the entire country. Our Solicitor General Division, they oversee all the litigation. They directly handle a number of cases before appellate courts, and they facilitate the state's involvement in amicus curiae briefs. Some of the cases I want to highlight from the past year, one of the biggest cases are a mental health case. As you're aware, you may be aware, Department of Justice sued the state over our mental health system a little over 5 years ago. And basically what we were facing down was a federal takeover of our mental health system. We successfully appealed that case. The Fifth Circuit agreed with us that we were not in violation of the ADA, and we are no longer facing a costly and onerous federal takeover. And one I want to mention, just because it's so timely, was today our Deputy Solicitor General was before the Mississippi Supreme Court arguing in support of the Independent Schools Infrastructure Grant Program that this body created in 2022 with ARPA funds. So that's just a kind of a example of some of the representative cases from the Solicitor General's division. Our cybercrime division, I know this is a really big issue across all state agencies. Initially, the cybercrime division was created in 2000 to investigate sexual exploitation of children online and to provide assistance to Mississippi's law enforcement. Since then, it's obviously grown. Nearly every criminal case has a cyber element. They now address major fraud, data theft, and cybersecurity. The Attorney General's office, and specifically our cyber division, is responsible for the state's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. That's comprised of more than 80 law enforcement agencies, 100 law enforcement personnel from across the state, and they address threats to Mississippi's children. Our cyber division is also host to the Cyber Fraud Task Force, which is a partnership with the Secret Service. We are one of more than 40 domestic and international cyber fraud task force. We are proud of this division and the highly skilled and trained professionals, and we leverage those federal resources we receive for things like the ICAC and support law enforcement from around the state. We have one cyber lab here in Jackson, one cyber lab on the coast, and we are setting one up in North Mississippi so that we can support law enforcement in any of their investigations and help them in any way possible. Last year, we received over 49,000 tips from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And that's almost double the number from the year before. And that was to our cyber division. Moving on to our Public Integrity Division, which is our main prosecutorial division. It's like the DA's office. We have statewide jurisdiction. We prosecute cyber crimes, like we mentioned before, exploitation of children, vulnerable adults, human trafficking, and a number of other cases. We now also, as I think you heard from Commissioner Tyndall about this, we now handle the prosecution for all officer-involved shootings in our Public Integrity Division. We often work with our federal partners on big cases, like the Rankin County 6, Express Grain. Those are two big cases we've been working on this past year. The criminal complaints that the Public Integrity Division received over the last year was almost 8,000, a little over 7,000. And human trafficking, I mentioned this. This is something that we have put an extra emphasis on, and to date, we have certified over 425 officers. And those are officers across the state that we have trained to specially investigate human trafficking. We've conducted 55 multi-jurisdictional operations that have yielded 80 arrests. And most importantly, we recovered 327 victims, 21 of which are children. So that's over the course of 4 years in office. So. Our Prosecutor and Law Enforcement Training Division. This is the division that develops programs and provides training to prosecutors, law enforcement, and other key figures in the criminal justice system. In 2023, we conducted 157 trainings. We trained for 195 days out of the year, and we had 6,525 attendees to our trainings. Moving on to our Consumer Protection Division. This is the division that enforces Mississippi's Consumer Protection Act and Antitrust Act, which the legislature passed to protect Mississippians from unfair, anti-competitive, and deceptive business practices that harm our community. Many of you are aware of this. This is when your constituents call because they've been harmed or wronged by a business, and this is who we connect them with. For FY23, we had 13,682 inquiries by consumers in the state. Each one of these goes through our consumer mediators. They review the complaint, and then they process that, and that may mean that they moves on to our PID, Public Integrity Division, because there's some type of criminal activity there. The mediators often are able to resolve these complaints in favor of the consumer. But as you can tell, the volume is high, and this is one of the most forward-facing divisions in the AG's office. Consumer Protection also handles large, important cases against Mississippi consumers. Two of the big cases that we brought recently include the case against insulin manufacturers over the drug prices, the exorbitant drug prices, and a recent case against Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, for their harmful practices against minors. So we do bring those large cases on behalf of Mississippi consumers. Our Bureau of Victims Assistance, I know this is something I was discussing with some of you before. This is the division that provides statewide assistance to victims of crime through compensation and advocates. We do receive some federal funding for this division, and unfortunately it has been cut over the years, but we're still providing the same level of service to our victims. So last fiscal year, we have 3 advocates, and they served 957 victims of crimes and provided 14 trainings to DA's victims assistance providers. We also coordinate out of this division the Victims of Human Trafficking and Commercial Sexual Exploitation Fund. This is a fund that y'all have generously funded at $2.5 million for the past 2 years, and we have awarded grants at over $4.5 million. We also administer the Law Enforcement Officers and Firefighters Disability Benefits Trust Fund. I know the commissioner was talking about the death benefit. This is for those first responders who are hurt in the line of duty. Opinions Division, we, by statute, issue opinions on interpretations of state law. Last year, we issued over 100 AG opinions, and that's to elected officials, locals, and other government entities across the state. Finally, our State Agencies Division provides legal representation to all of our agencies, boards, and commissions. They provide like general counsel type representation. We've organized the divisions into special practice areas, including boards and commissions, business and finance, education, health and well-being, natural resources, public safety, and infrastructure, so that we can best serve the needs of the state. We also have specialized employment attorneys and contract attorneys that serve all the agencies. So that's just a little overview of the Attorney General's office. I want to kind of move into our budget. This year, we are requesting nearly level funding. We're requesting $40,422,055. That is $30,796,135 in general funds, and the remainder in special funds. This is only a $200,000 increase in general funds. So that's all. We're only requesting $200,000 over level funding from last year. And the $200,000 is to upkeep the Mississippi Access to Maternal Assistance website and application that was created by Senate Bill 2781 last year. This is the MAMA program. Y'all created this, and this program, as you'll recall, is a program that connects pregnant women, new mothers, with all of the public and private resources that are available in Mississippi. And so it is a website they can visit. It's a mobile application. We launched in October 1st with the website and January 1st with the app. We've had nearly over 8,000 users to date. We were not given any appropriation last year for this program, but we were able to leverage resources at ITS to set up the website and the app. But we'll need the money to maintain the program and to further the program. I think I'd heard at one point, the legislature, someone estimated it'd be about $300,000 to run. We're leveraging partnerships and we feel confident we can do this for less. So we're asking for just a $200,000 increase to our budget this year. If you want me to, I'll speak. I know base level recommended about $1 million cut from our salary line from
Go ahead, because I was about to ask.
there was a recommendation for $1 million cut to our salary line from last fiscal year or from this fiscal year and from our request for next fiscal year. We would definitely request to keep that money. As you can tell from all the divisions I described, our most critical asset is our people. And so we do need that money.
But how many vacant positions are there?
So I think we've looked at this and it looks like about 6 vacant positions. So I'll tell you kind of where we're at with that. There are some of those positions that are technically filled, some we're looking to fill. For example, CCID, we talked about, I didn't mention this, but in our prosecutor, our public integrity division, that's where the 2 prosecutors for HB 1020 for the CCID, we would need 2 additional prosecutors. The bill says that we should designate 2 prosecutors, so we'll need 2 prosecutors and a paralegal, as well as.
Have y'all begun applying for hiring those?
We have not hired anybody. Right now we're waiting. I mean, legally speaking, we do have a motion to dismiss pending on that case, basically to get rid of the case. Legally speaking, there is nothing preventing the majority of that bill from going into effect. The only thing that's enjoined is the 2 additional, the circuit court judges. So the bill says we should designate. So right now we're waiting on a judge to be named and the court to be set up. So
are you, if it designate, are you hiring people for that to fill in this position?
We anticipate the volume to be high once everything starts turning, and so that we will need to. We do think we will need to hire 2 prosecutors. I mean, if the volume is what we think it will be, we won't be able to handle that with our current prosecutors. But no, we have not hired anybody yet. So that's on the, that's on the table.
That leaves 4 of the 6, that leaves 4 remaining.
So yes, and then the paralegal, we think they'll need a paralegal as well if they're handling.
So that's 3.
So the next things I want to mention, number 1, our Solicitor General's division, I mentioned earlier, handles all the appeals. We do have somebody hired that's coming in this early summer. So some of these lawsuits, I know for me, I took a job 10 months before I graduated law school. I was offered a job and took it 10 months before I graduated law school. So to attract talent, sometimes, we have to make an offer well before they can come into the office. And so we do have a hire coming into the Solicitor General's division early summer. We also, last year, we asked for additional resources for CPS attorneys. We handle all the termination of parental rights for CPS, and we want to get involved in the process earlier. We've been talking with CPS. We think that it makes sense to have an attorney involved from the very beginning when a child comes into custody through to the end, not just getting involved at the end.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because, let's see, you sent an email to Corbin on this issue where you stated that on this issue that you've hired 4 attorneys, total of 14 attorneys and 3 paralegals. And that as you move into that work, we'll need additional attorneys and paralegals.
Yes.
Okay. So my recollection is we gave y'all money for 4 attorneys previously. I think it was like 2 years ago. Is that what you're talking about?
I think, and that email, can you remind me the date on that email?
October of 23.
Okay. We received, I believe last year, we received additional funding for some of those attorneys. And we are trying to hire, and we're working with CPS to be involved in the process earlier. It's a new process. We are working with CPS regularly to be involved in the process. It's a goal to be, to expand that.
Well, hold on.
To expand on that.
So all right, let me separate it this way.
Sure.
I think it was last year or 2 years ago, we appropriated money for 2 or 3 attorneys at y'all's request.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, did those attorneys go into this division or did they go somewhere else?
We are hiring, we have hired, and I apologize, I don't know the number always fluctuates with, attorneys on staff and especially our CPS. We have hired additional CPS attorneys. And I have to,
From 2 years ago, y'all requested money for 3 attorneys.
yeah, we requested, I think it was 6 attorneys and
Maybe
3
6 attorneys.
paralegals.
Okay.
Yes,
And so where did they end up?
they ended up in the CPS. We were,
Okay, for that.
yes,
Which you state, okay.
We got-
we've hired
we
an
only-
additional 4 attorneys in this email.
and I apologize, I don't have that email in front of me.
I'm not hiding anything. It says
Yeah, yeah.
Corbin and working together with CPS, Attorney General attorneys will begin to be involved before and after TPRs to the extent permissible. We've hired additional 4 attorneys this year, bringing total to 14 attorneys who work in the group and
Yes.
3 paralegals.
Chairman, yes, we have hired those attorneys from last year, but as we are furthering that process, like Whitney says, we are looking to hire at least 2 additional attorneys in that division.
Okay, and what, do they fall under the civil litigation division or which one?
They're actually part of the state agencies, but we are actually putting them all together right now in a criminal justice division. So children's justice, sorry, so that we can track all those expenditures. So we've actually kind of put them all in a little program by themselves at this point. But from your standpoint, from the legislative standpoint, they're going to fall under other mandated programs since we only have 7 legislative programs.
Okay. Well, let's explore that. So, in your email, you said a major factor, this is all about TPR, termination of parental rights, and a major
Yes.
factor in the process is that CPS is not a party at all phases and the AG is not the legal representation at all phases. There's been discussion, and I think even legislation that CPS needs to be involved throughout. So, and there's a discussion and a request that attorneys for CPS, that CPS have additional attorneys paid for to address this issue. So when y'all say in this email that y'all are working, I haven't heard that to be the case. I got CPS saying we need attorneys for this, and I got the AG's office saying we need attorneys for this. And the process, as you state in your email, is the complexity and the length of the case. And CPS is not a party. CPS has said they need to and we passed the law that says they are now parties in this matter.
Yes.
So, but they don't have attorneys during that time, is what I've been told. So I don't want to duplicate efforts. We're trying to figure out how we can make this more efficient for the children. So, is this going to solve the problem or the issue? Because as you state in your email, y'all aren't a party until it gets to the TPR phase.
Yes, right. I mean, traditionally, the AG's office did not get involved until they had made the plan, the child's plan had changed from reunification to TPR
Right.
adoption. And that's when our involvement was triggered. And like the CPS has said, they feel like, I think everyone agrees that there may be a better result and a faster, a more seamless process if the same attorney is involved from the beginning to the
So
end.
why shouldn't that be the CPS attorney? A CPS attorney
Are you-
who can carry the case throughout?
Well, again, traditionally, we have been involved at the TPR. We have been their attorney in court. CPS hasn't been in court, and we just think that it makes sense for us to continue
Well,
as the attorney in court, but starting at the beginning. And we do work closely with CPS. We meet with them weekly.
well, I know, but okay, so we passed the law that says CPS is a party in these cases.
Yes.
Okay, we passed that last year for the reasons that you're talking about.
Mhm.
I can tell you from handling cases, I think any attorney that it is really it is a hard when you come in the middle of a case.
Absolutely.
Okay. But by the current law, y'all don't come in until the TPR.
Yes.
Okay. So, and even though we've done it traditionally and it's always been done the same way, would it not make sense that if CPS is a party from the beginning, that their attorneys who are familiar with the case would carry this through?
We think it's best if we could be involved from the get-go. Are you asking in that example, would we still do the TPRs or would they do the TPRs?
Well, I don't know, but I know what I got, which is when I say I mean the legislature has had requests from the AG's office and CPS about attorneys handling these cases. And we haven't seemed to have gotten there. And rightfully by your email, it says length and complexity of the process and we're trying to get these kids through the system faster and more
100%.
efficiently.
Absolutely. So I think, the answer to this may be that we sit down, our office, CPS, with you and other members of the committee, if you want to, going forward to figure, because I think we all want this, we all want the same result. And we're certainly not trying to, say we do it versus them. We want to make sure we figure out what the best route is. We had been in consultation with CPS and we had talked about, our office doing it. And we've been trying to have hired some attorneys for that purpose. And so.
Okay, so, right. Okay, so I do think that would probably, before we launch off into hiring other attorneys for this process, I think we need to get some kind of plan on this.
Absolutely.
So that we who are, let's just say, appropriating the money to address this process, we're not duplicating efforts.
Sure, absolutely.
So then in your budget request or y'all's budget request, it's level funding. So you said in your email that y'all are going to be moving into more of the TPR phase work, but you're not requesting more attorneys for that.
Not right now, we're not, because we're still trying to implement this process. It's still new for us. So I don't think at this time that's why we want to keep our level funding, but I don't think we have not asked for additional money. We're still working with CPS on this process.
Chairman, if I could add something there, I think the distinguishment is the CPS attorneys are in-house counsel attorneys, whereas our attorneys, if we get them in the front of the case there, our attorneys are the ones that will actually carry the case to court, since we would have to represent in court. And like you were saying, we don't want to duplicate the effort. If we have attorneys in there from the get-go, we feel like we can speed that process up. And from the funding aspect, that's why we're asking for these 6 positions to be reinstated along with the funding, is so we can hire those additional attorneys in that area, as well as the CCID.
But are y'all saying okay, and I'm using this as an example. Child gets picked up on a pickup order, okay, and has to be involved. And it looks like whatever, there may be something going on. CPS is already involved because the child's been issued pickup order. So are you saying that y'all need to come in at that point?
Yes.
On all these cases?
That's what we'd like. It's an aspirational goal, but yes, that's what we would like, is to be involved at the very beginning. And we would work alongside CPS. This is not something where we're trying to do this in a vacuum. We're partners. And again, we all want the same goal.
Well, with them being a party, that we've made them a party, they're now, I would argue, entitled to representation. And their request to us has been, we're a party and we need to be, CPS is a party. Okay, so we need representation, or we need to represent ourselves.
And we think we can be there for that. That's what we want to do.
To represent CPS, or to represent the issues of CPS dealing with these children?
The issues of the CPS dealing with the children. But again, I think maybe how we can resolve this, because I don't want to, I don't want to speak out of turn. I know you've had hearings with CPS and conversations with them, as well as other people in our office. I think we probably want to get the stakeholders around a table, and because we are, I'll say it again. I know I've said it multiple times. We do want the same goal. We're not trying to battle for territory by any means.
Okay. All right. Yes, we need to explore that a little more before but I think this goes to filling the vacant position. So LBR has has cut the positions. And I think before we make a final decision as to whether we restore those positions is how that's going to be handled and where those positions are going to go. You've told me that 2 of the prosecutors are for 1020.
Yes,
Okay, so we know that
plus a
So-
paralegal for that.
for the paralegal. Okay, so then that's leaving, I guess, 4 other positions. And three other positions.
we
So
ha-
we need to figure that out.
We have one new hire coming in early summer for our Solicitor General's division.
Okay, but I would also think that if we're going to do, like you said in your email, that we move into more cases for this, to move these kids through the court system, it's going to take more effort and attorneys and things like that. We don't have a request for that. I guess I think where I'm going with it is, I think there's a lot of movement, and the governor in his EBR has put forward a plan to add additional chancellors to address the youth in this state.
Mhm.
Which my point is, the governor doing that, to me, tells me that's a serious thing. The governor's office sees that as something we need to address. So I think there's a lot on this that we need to explore.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on, because I know we're getting time and I know I want to leave it to the other committee members. Okay, on the criminal investigations division, actually, before I move on to that, on the division judgments and settlements,
Yes.
which is what you said is the other ones. So as I've been informed, that is traditionally has to be funded in a deficit bill,
Yes.
which makes it very hard. And I can tell you, as having been on the appropriations, it always, what's the saying, gets my goat, that we end up paying as much as we pay in settlements and all out of money, appropriated monies. Not that we're never going to have a lawsuit. My question is, how can we get to the process where that's better understood and can be better applied for? And rather than doing it at a deficit, that we do it in a regular appropriation?
Chairman, I'll answer that question. Just like we've asked in the past 2 years, we've asked for $500,000 appropriation up front. And we've also said that we will be glad to provide you like a monthly report of exactly what expenditures got paid out of that. So therefore, we are not waiting sometimes 12 to 18 months later to pay the law firms that are doing the service on our behalf. So we're basically asking for appropriation up front as part of the budget process and not waiting until the session and asking for a deficit.
And when you say law firms, you're talking about outside law firms that y'all have contracted to handle such cases, or I guess the plaintiff's case, the plaintiff's attorneys. Wrongful death, stuff like that.
Or any other settlements that we've settled on behalf of other state agencies that may require a payout, that usually goes through our process as well.
I'll kind of break it out for it may be helpful. So we have in our deficit appropriation request, we have settlements, and those can be, settlements on behalf of the state, on behalf of the state agency. Some are multi-year settlements. We have one, for example, this EPA one, it is a multi-year. Every year we have to maintain a brownfield site. And so we get a bill every year. That's part of our settlement. We have wrongful incarceration settlements that are also multi-year. So there, you can anticipate, on those wrongful incarceration suits, you can anticipate to the dollar how much we will have to pay each year. Then, as Yolanda alluded to, we also have, I'll go in.
I'm sorry, this is an issue because Corbin's just shown me what the request is, and like, this gets my compensation for Curtis Flowers, year 4 of 10. That was a DA who rung the state through all of this. What are we doing? And other than the state paying it, what is the DA or whomever, what recourse do they have? But now the state's on the hook for $50,000 for 10 years.
Mr. Chairman, this is how the statute is set up. The statute doesn't have anything in there to, we're responsible for defending these wrongful incarceration suits. And some are settled because we only settle cases when it's in the best interest of the state, when we know there is a savings we can bring to the state. And we do.
Meaning, rather than going to trial?
Yes, we will always settle. If we are settling a case, it is always less than the demand. And so again, we do not take settlements lightly. We know these are taxpayer dollars, and it's when we make the determination that it's in the best interest of the state to save the state the money to settle the case. And these wrongful incarcerations, they can,
And here's.
And again, this is the way the statute sets it up to where it's a multi-year settlement. I don't think we can pay it out in lump sum, and we as the state have to defend these, not the DAs.
I know, but in that case, the Curtis Flowers, it was the DA who drugged this and did all this and led it to the Supreme Court. And now the state's on the hook and the taxpayers are on the hook. I know y'all settle it, but there's got to be an accountability somewhere. And I don't know, maybe that DA should be here.
I was gonna say, we don't have any legal mechanism.
But having been an appropriations member, I consistently see what you're calling the wrongful incarceration.
Mhm.
Maybe some of these agencies or not agencies or entities need to understand that it costs taxpayer money to do that. And it's approximately $2 million a year in this. So do that. Okay, I'm moving on.
Okay.
So I guess I get to the question of how can we predict or how can we make this a better budget?
And to avoid deficits, we
yes.
could, in terms of, and again, the way the law is set up on the wrongful incarceration, it is set up for a multi-year settlement. You could appropriate the money, but we still have to do it year by year. So we talked about we asked in our original budget request for 500,000, and that is for any other settlement that may come up, any judgment. When we have a judgment against the state, judgments like Olivia Y, part of that judgment we're required to pay the plaintiff's counsel. That is a year by year, but we know that's coming up yearly. We also had under the mental health case, we were paying a monitor in that case. That was part of the judgment. We don't have to pay that monitor anymore. So that's a savings. Another case where we have.
So do you currently give an update to the appropriations chairman about where these are? Do you just settle it and say, here's a $50,000 obligation to the state?
Do we talk with the appropriations chairman before we settle?
Well, not about settling, because I understand that's y'all's duty, but it seems, is there a consistent update of some kind?
We do update on big cases, case status of costly cases. We do present the liability of the state of all the big cases that we have every year, and those that are pending, and try to be forthcoming with information throughout the process to the extent that we can, with maintaining privilege. And so the one thing Yolanda alluded to is outside counsel. In certain cases, we do have to hire outside counsel in a defense capacity. And again, this is like settlements. We do not take this lightly because we don't do this very frequently. But when the case, depending on the complexity, usually has to do with discovery of having to retain certain experts, and that we don't have money for experts. And quite frankly, the way the procurement laws work, can't do it confidentially. So we will have to retain outside counsel, and that we've asked for the 500,000 kind of as an operating budget. We can't always predict, when we're going to have to hire outside counsel. One big case right now we have outside counsel for is legislative redistricting. We did have to hire outside counsel specifically for the purposes of experts and that, and sometimes the cost of outside counsel, we enter into an initial contract. We usually try not to enter into a contract for longer than a year. But things can happen. The cost can go up and change throughout. And when we do update y'all, but a lot of times these law firms will take these cases on, and they will do work for the state without being paid for 6-7 months, because we don't have any money in our operating budget to pay them on the front end. So that $500,000 or an amount in our budget for these type things, for settlements, judgments, outside counsel would be very helpful. We would be full reporting to the legislature.
Because you got a budget to pay the outside counsel representing the state plus and then the plaintiff's counsel?
We usually don't pay, I mean, unless there's a judgment, we don't have to
I
pay
got
plaintiff's counsel. That's only in Olivia Y. We're paying
Right.
plaintiff's counsel.
Okay, we may need to go more than that. I want to go to the civil litigation division,
Mhm.
and y'all said that, that's the division that covers defending defending the state by laws and things that get passed. But I think we have seen that there's not always a forceful defense of the laws passed by the legislature. So what is the process used to decide how to defend the laws passed by the legislature?
I mean,
Because what y'all were in your presentation, you were saying our role is to defend the state and the state laws.
that is our role. That's our statutory duty, and we do
Right.
defend the laws of the state vigorously.
That's how it should be, and that's how we want it to be if the
Absolutely.
legislature's passing the law.
Absolutely.
Okay. So my question is, what's the process used to decide how you defend those cases?
What's the process? Like, how do we assign attorneys? How do we
No,
develop
like,
trial
how-
strategy?
The strategy.
I mean, it just depends on it's a case by case, but I mean, like I mentioned, we do vigorously defend the laws of the state. When we are sued, I mean, that's our statutory duty. And no matter that, in fact, we have people always approaching us saying, don't you think this law is unconstitutional? We have questions in our opinions division that say, is this law unconstitutional?
But the difference is the legislature passes a law, which the legislature is the voice of the people under our form of government. And I'm just being honest. I've had people tell me that they've questioned the veracity of the defenses of the laws passed by the legislature. And so in y'all's presentation, it was, we defend the state based on the laws that are passed. And I'm saying that's seen in your presentation, rightfully so, that's what the Attorney General's office is there to do.
Absolutely.
Or that's the mission that's laid out by the state. Yet the comments that have been made to me are that doesn't always get done equally across the board depending on the case.
Okay, well, I'd like to explore that more, certainly, because we want to make sure that everyone's receiving the same level of representation. We have some phenomenal attorneys in civil litigation. We have been, and these are what I call, and across the agency, I call these, individuals mission driven. I mean, these are individuals that could make 2-3 times as much in the private sector, but they are committed to the mission of the state, defending our laws and making this place a better place than it was yesterday. And so we can definitely discuss that further, because our folks are in court every day defending our laws.
They are, and it's the Attorney General's common law powers to be able to choose who they defend or not. And I'm talking about like state officers. But y'all make the decision whether you're going to defend a state office holder or not, right?
Well, I mean, in most instances, we will defend unless there's conflict, unless there's some type of conflict. We will defend, the state law, state officer, unless there is a.
And so then that costs us, the legislature, additional money. Am I wrong in that?
That would be fact dependent on the case. If there was a conflict, I mean, we can, if you want to talk offline, or if there's something that I can speak to openly without violating any type of privilege on a particular case.
Well, no, I think it gets to the presentation was in the civil litigation division that the mission of the Attorney General as the state's attorney is to defend the laws that are passed by the legislature.
Absolutely.
And I'm just saying that what's comments made to me is there's people who question the veracity of that defense depending on the law. Now, it is the Attorney General's powers under the common law to be able to, I guess, choose what they defend and what they don't. But I think it's just the question is it the same in every single case?
I would say yes. I mean,
Okay.
That's what's important about it. You have a tightly run division, that you have oversight, and you have the same person you have a division director who's overseeing all the cases. You have individual attorneys who are handling them. And I mean, an attorney general who's overseeing everything. And so it's not like you have attorneys off on their own, just handling cases and nobody knows how they're defending the case. I mean, we do defend all the laws and the elected officials. I mean, we have, like I said, over 300 cases at any given time defending. I think we have a case that we're defending nearly every statewide elected official, almost every agency we've handled litigation for. So it's, I mean,
So
we do vigorously defend. I mean, there's a rare instance where we don't, because of a conflict, we may not be able to handle a case and a conflict that presents, whether it be a position that AG's taken before or for other reason, as you well know, our conflict rules that apply to attorneys.
okay. I know we're running out of time. I'm going to open it up to any committee members. Senator Hickman, did you have a question? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. If you have anything else in closing?
Well, first of all, thank y'all for the time. I do appreciate it. One last point I wanted to make, kind of going back to the salary line. I said our biggest asset is our people. We do want to restore that $1 million back to the salary line for those positions, but also going to flexibility. It's important that we have flexibility. It's still a challenge to recruit and retain professionals. The legal market is extremely tight. We can't even begin to compete with the private sector, but we're hardly competing sometimes with our fellow state agencies. Y'all have been a huge help, and SEC2 has been a huge help in getting our attorney salaries and other professionals within the office and investigators salaries where they need to be. But we still only have 11 attorneys who are at or above market value and 6 investigators who are at or above. So I think that's pretty telling that we have some room to go. And we want to value these attorneys. I mean, like I said, we have amazing attorneys, investigators, professional staff in our office who are dedicated to the mission of this state and protecting this state. And we want to value them at the level that they give to the job every day.
Well,
And we appreciate everything y'all have done for this office over the years and the support and trust.
I appreciate y'all being here and for your presentation and what y'all brought here today. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes this appropriations hearing. Thank y'all very much.